So ladies, another message for both of you I do have, and this one is taken from the book of Hebrews, chapter 10, verses 1 through 18. And so if both of you can take probably just 30 seconds out of your very busy days, I encourage you to read these verses. Hebrews 10, verses 1 through 18. And so with that said, I title this message, The Master Key. Let me say that one more time for effect. I like this. The Master Key. You know, if there's one attribute about the book of Hebrews as a whole, at least for me, it is the book of illumination, in that it illuminates unbelievable truth if people are willing just to read it. And here's what I mean by that. In chapter 10, the author of Hebrews talks about a practice that was so ingrained into ancient Israelite culture that it was for the most part institutionalized. And this, of course, was sacrifice. And sacrifice, you know, as far as the Bible is concerned, you can trace it pretty much back to the time of Adam and Eve, to Cain and Abel. But it really wasn't until the time of Moses that it was institutionalized in both a civil and religious way. And really, if you talked against the sacrificial system in ancient Israeli culture, you could be put to death for such talk. So people adhered to this practice in a very stringent manner. And, you know, even the Romans during the time of the book of Hebrews adhered to sacrifice, though it was not obviously done to the God of Israel. But the point that the author makes here, and again, this is profound, is that for all the pomp and circus of the sacrificial system within Israel, it was ultimately a failure. Because at the end of the day, the people were still dead in their sins. In other words, sacrifice did not atone for sin. Now, one thing that it did do, obviously, the author makes this clear, is that it gave the people a sense of their sinfulness. But at the end of the day, though, it didn't atone for sin. And so the people were still left in the dark. And so the sacrificial system was really then, as a result, a shadow, and I think a very dim shadow, of the ultimate sacrifice which would come into the world some 1,500 years later in the person of Christ. And this now gets me really to the title of my devotion to both of you. So the Master Key himself came into the world, and through his once and for all sacrifice, and again, Hebrews 10 teaches this, unlocked eternal life for those who believe in him. Christ's sacrifice doesn't have to be repeated. It is once and for all and totally and wholly sufficient in and of itself. And so the practical application for me in all of this, I think, is simply this. When we place something at Christ's altar of forgiveness, and that's exactly what it is, we don't need to take it back off that altar. I think 1 John talks about the fact, right, that when we ask forgiveness, he's faithful and will forgive us. It's done, and it's done and complete. Why? Because Christ's death on that cross was once and for all. And you know, I think so often, due to our own sinful nature and the sinful nature of others, we allow people who are either ignorant of this truth or, more than often, willfully ignorant of this truth to steal our joy from us. But my advice to you is to live in the reality of Christ's once and for all sacrifice. He is faithful. If you confess your sin to him, you are forgiven. God bless you both.